This is the How to MSP podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Moore.
There's an initial revenue opportunity of rolling out AI tooling and access to models and whatever that is. And then there's a long-term, much larger revenue opportunity on being the go-to company that manages the intelligence and AI spend for an organization. Make sure they're spending in the right places, doing the right things, and optimizing the right processes or re-architecting processes entirely. So the latter is the big opportunity, and not everyone sees that right now.
All right. Welcome to the How to MSP podcast. I am your host, Andrew Moore, and today we have a very special guest. This is Jimmy Hatzell with Hatz AI, and I'm excited to have him on the show. Thanks for joining me today. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. Very excited to be on.
Nice. So where does the podcast find you today? Where are you physically at, so everyone knows where you're at?
Live from New York. No, we're actually not live, but it's not Saturday. It's at the time of this recording, it's Monday morning at like 9 a.m. So I don't know if you tell people that, but that's where we are.
Yeah, it is. No, it's fair. And the funny thing is you've become such a busy person. They were like, we can fit you in Monday morning. And I was like, when? And they were like 9 o'clock Eastern. I was like, oh, okay. So sounds great. I'll get up and I'll do a podcast at 8 o'clock Central. That sounds fantastic.
No, I thank you for doing that, man. I'm going to be honest.
Awesome.
I looked at it too and I was like, why do we schedule this? Okay. You know what? Let's just get on. I'm excited to talk to Andrew.
Screw it. Just do it. So no, I'm glad that you were on. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and your journey and what you're doing today? Just kind of give us a little bit of background on why the channel should care about your opinions and where you came from to get here.
Yeah, sure. So again, Jimmy Hatzell, CEO, co-founder of Hatz AI. I've been working in the MSP channel for the majority of my career. The background in cybersecurity, worked in IT, and I've worked at a couple of cyber companies in various roles. And a couple of years ago, I was looking at sort of where things were going with AI, and there's really three things that I was pretty confident and bullish on back then, and this is like 2023. The first is that there's going to be more demand for AI tomorrow than there is today. And that'll be true for a very long time. The second is people will need more help with AI tomorrow than they do today. And that'll be true for a very long time. And the third is that MSPs could bridge that gap and monetize that, create value, etc. And so we set Hatz AI up to enable MSPs, put them in that business, help them distribute, manage, sell everything around AI, which is a pretty open-ended business to start. And Andrew, you've been, you've been a confidant to me over the years, especially early on. I definitely called you with many ideas, and you can see how things have drifted over time. But the easiest way to think about it is we think of how small businesses will use AI, what's valuable to them, and how can we productize that so MSPs can manage and sell that and provide value and services on top of that. So we have an open-ended business model. What that looks like today, we can get into, but that's what we do. And I guess that's why you should listen. I don't know, maybe turn it off.
No. I love that. And it's great because me personally, and I remember when we first started having these conversations years ago about what you were doing, I almost had a very myopic view of like, this should be good for the MSP. Like, this is a product MSP should be buying. And I think you rightly saw that there was an opportunity to sell through to the MSP customers, which at the time I hadn't even gone that far. I was like, well, this is just something that we need to be doing to automate things within our own MSP. I almost saw it like a Roost or a PIA type solution. I was like, oh, okay, so we're going to use AI to do this. And, Jimmy and his team are going to build something for that. And at first I was like, wait, how are you going to sell this MSPs? And then I started to see what you guys were doing with it. I was like, oh, okay. Like that's wise. Like you guys made a really good, I don't know that I'm going to call it a pivot. I don't know how it landed in your roadmap, but I think it was a really interesting place for you guys to go. And obviously very prescient that you were able to get that product out when you did. I think it really has borne a change in the industry as a whole. People are talking about it, which is great. It's where you want to be personally.
Yeah, it's been fun, and to be honest, we've been a bit ahead of where things are for the most part, and in some cases behind, right? Like, so there's this duality to it where we see where things are going and we make bets on that. But like early on, right? Like I had a small engineering team. Now we have a huge engineering team, right? And we're able to ship quickly and keep up. And new feature would come out on like ChatGPT or something, and the next day people would be like, "Well, why don't you guys have that?" And it's like, "We're working on it. We're working on it." Now
Right.
those cycles are a lot smaller, and we can like the new features have sort of like there's not as many now, I guess, or people are still trying to intake, how to use AI um, in its maximum capabilities where it was at like 6-9 months ago. So we're always thinking of the future. We're always building ahead, but we're meeting people where they're at too.
Yeah. Well, and so I've been to a couple of conferences just in the last 6 months, and it what people are talking about today is at the MSP conference in the channel. They are not what they were talking about 12 months ago, right? So 12 months
Yeah,
ago, you would go to a conference and people were saying, hey, maybe we should be thinking about AI. And then they were talking about security and, all the, governance and, automation and all the other stuff. And then it's, this year it's been, hey, let's talk about the shift to AI and how it matters to the channel, how it matters to how we sell to our clients. What are our clients asking us? So let's talk a little bit about how fast this is happening and
yeah,
why it's happening so fast. Like, what is happening outside of what you're seeing with your company and the models with like Anthropic and, what we're seeing with OpenAI and with Google and all of them as they're building these models? Why is this happening so fast? And why is this different
yeah.
than anything that's happened in the past, like say virtualization or cloud compute or whatever that looks like? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, like I have a very unique view on this because I was there for security, right? Like I was meeting with MSPs 2016, like, hey, we should, we're going to offer SOC services, and people are like, well, what do you mean? We have antivirus, we have, WebRoot installed or whatever. Like, it's like, no, you need more than that. You need to offer security as a service and sort of all of that, and watch that happen over like, say, a 5-6 year period of maturity. I've seen this go through that same period of maturity in a matter of maybe a year, right? So it's like 6x faster. So like there's two sort of macro things that are happening. Um, the cost of intelligence is going to zero. So what does that mean? Well, you've got an iPhone, you get like the summary, the AI summary, right, on your phone, right, where it's just a local model sort of doing that. It's like, okay, right? It's like, hey, your group text, your family's going off and like they're trying to plan Easter or whatever, you know,
And
4th of
then they'll like
July planning, right?
summarize it and tell you what's
Yeah.
going on in your chat. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But then the cost of the top most frontier, highest capable intelligence is up and to the right through the roof, right? Where these models are getting more expensive and more capable at the same time. So you have this weird duality where like, I need to go and analyze my email gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? As more open source models come out, as lower parameter models that are a lot more capable are released at a lower cost. But then the most expensive models are just getting the most capable ones that can run for sometimes like an hour or 2 hours, sort of unmonitored, are just crazy expensive. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can now rethink a lot of business processes and rethink the way that we do them when you have cost of intelligence going, you know, down, approaching zero, right? So you can have some imagination. We didn't have this magic box that you could ask almost any question to a couple of years ago and it answers pretty quickly. But then at the same time, if people are using frontier highest capable intelligence, the costs are going to go crazy. So like I'm telling you right now, we're a year, maybe two out from the majority of SMBs spending more money on AI than security.
So let's put a pin in that for a quick second, because if it's happening that fast though, when you're talking about people spending money, like is SMB spending money on it, do you mean that it's already injected into, like let's just say I'm making this up, like the version of QuickBooks they're using, there's QuickBooks and then there's QuickBooks with AI, right? So they're spending a little bit extra on that. Are you talking about that kind of stuff? Or are you talking about they're using some model within their business exclusively? They're using like a containerized version of Claude, or they're using some sort of, enterprise version of Copilot. Like, what does that mean to you? Like when you say that they're spending money on this, what are they spending money on?
So they're not using an enterprise version of anything. They're using personal ChatGPT accounts that are unmonitored, not issued by IT, and people are doing it. And everyone, not everyone, I shouldn't say everyone. That's not realistic. But many people are just sticking their head in the sand, like, oh well, I don't think they're ready to use AI. And it's like, no, like people are using it. They're just doing it on their personal phone. Like if everyone started using their Gmail to email everyone, their personal account, like everybody would be freaking out, right? But then, and they'd be like, we need to get, approved, blah, 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 blah. Like, and yeah. So like it's changing very quickly. So you're talking about like the systems of record, right? The QuickBooks of the world, your PSAs of the world, right? Your CRMs of the world. They're all getting AI added features. And yes, like people are spending more on that. People are doing the upgrades to get the extra license, to get access to it, all that kind of stuff. But these systems of record are all becoming more and more queryable. So if you look at like where Salesforce is going, they're going with this Agent 360, where they're sort of like, hey, in the future, maybe we won't have a UI. We'll just have like the best connectors ever to people's data. That is going to trickle down through a lot of these systems of record, right? I'm sure lots of people will create great add-on AI features and they'll be useful. In my business, right, we use Slack, we use Notion, they have AI features. But where it gets really useful is when you can pull them in an enterprise context management sort of situation into your AI agent of choice. So in my case, right, I use Hatz, right? But it might be Claude, it might be GPT, whatever. But these connectors are getting better and better. And even in the past, so just to break things down for you, like in IT Nation in November, vendors kept coming up to me and saying, hey, how can we build an integration with you? Can you set up a meeting with my team? Can you blah, 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 blah. And every single one I said, no. You need to build an HTTP compatible MCP server and I can connect it. And then they're like, well, what's that?
I was like, break that down for the audience. Like explain yourself.
Yeah. Right. So that is like, it's like an API, but it's a standard protocol. It's instructions for how an AI can safely and securely interact with your data and your system, where you can just say, hey, I have this MCP server. It has authentication. Users can log in. They can use an API key, whatever. Any AI system can connect to it. And we've defined a set of security controls, guardrails, etc. on that. So like that has been moving, and we made a big bet on that as a company over a year ago, really. And it's been through various iterations, right? Like the first versions of it, you had to run on local machines, and like, that's not scalable, right? That's like not secure, right? Like injecting environment variable files but this protocol has matured over time. And, fast forward 4 months later, you're seeing, right, Halo PSA has released an official MCP server. ScalePad has released an official MCP server. Liongard has released an official MCP server. Enable has released an official MCP server. And then there's dozens of third parties that all they do is take sort of these APIs for these vendors and then, remake them into MCP tools, which is great, right? So this like sort of like connecting your AI to the data problem is a short-term problem that's getting worked through. And you're seeing the same thing with SMB tools, but they actually, in many cases, are moving faster, right? Because a lot of the vendors that we know and love and rely on in MSP world have made lots of acquisitions, have very complicated API surfaces, weren't necessarily set up to integrate with AI. So it takes a little bit longer and it's a little, harder in many cases to get a PSA with, 1,000 API endpoints, right, connected to AI versus like, Monday.com or like
Right.
something that an SMB might use where it's like, hey, we have all this stuff and on it. So like you're seeing that acceleration where we internally did 30 integrations in 31 days last August. And, that was a big push for us. It took a lot of engineering power. A month ago, in 1 week, we added 26 integrations in 1 week. Now, we didn't drip them all out immediately. We put a lot of them feature flagged and reached out to users to test them before we released them GA, and we've been putting them out. But we'll be adding sort of 100, 200 connections, data connections a month, in a couple of months from now or in a given month. Sort of, I guess what I'm getting at is that like connection to your third party data in a secure and relevant way is a short-term problem. And when that happens, people start, the possibilities start multiplying, and you can really, like our business lives on Notion and in the code base and in Linear. My AI talks to Linear and our code base and Notion all the time, right? Like that's where I point it. And I say, go update this, go manage this, blah, 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 blah. So I think when I say that people will be spending more on AI than security in the near future, I do mean in some cases like these add-on solutions for products, but in many cases like pulling those products and data into the core sort of interface that they interact with their AI or where their agents live, I guess I should say.
No, it's incredibly helpful to go kind of deep dive into some of that because I think it, there's new language that like new vernacular that has to be brought out into the channel about what we're doing because it is a new technology. But I think that part of what I'm seeing is there's almost like this disconnect in the fact that this technology is all new and it's got all these different parameters and things that it needs to work with and what people are seeing as it's practically applied because of what you said, how fast it's coming out, but how familiar it feels in the way that you interact with it because it uses like a common voice in a lot of ways, right? Like what people are used to are these chat, functions where you can have this conversation with it so it doesn't feel as scary, right? As, hey, I need to take all of my data and move it into this cloud infrastructure. And you're like, oh, what is Azure? Like, how do my, what is
Yeah.
containerization? Like, how do I, put my data here versus like, oh, I have a storage folder on this server locally in my office, right? Which I understand because I see it. So I think it's really helpful to start laying that out for folks because there's a lot that goes into being, an MSP and having to know about all this stuff so that you can have a meaningful conversation, not only with your clients, but at some point your own internal team, because we're going to have to support this as MSPs, right? Like we're going to actually like have to answer questions about what an MCP server is and how do you connect to data and why you can't connect that to that yet, but like maybe one day it's coming or how do we work around that? So I think it's super helpful. So I do want to jump into, the different types. You talked about the different models. You talked about your model. You talked about, there's Gemini, there's,
Yep.
Claude, so, what are you making suggestions? What are you suggesting to folks outside of, use hats, right?
Yep.
We're doing what we're doing. But when a company is an MSP is trying to have a conversation with their client about what models to use, where are you guys at with that? Like, cause it felt like, OpenAI's model with ChatGPT was the de facto for a while. Now it feels like Anthropic's Claude has leapfrogged that. You've got Gemini kind of moving up and down the ladder a little bit here and there. You've got OpenClaw if you don't want to have something on the open internet. Like you've got all these different options. Like what are you telling people about like these models? How do you help them understand what they are and why they should use a particular one or multiple
So,
ones?
so my favorite model changes all the time, leapfrogs all the time, right?
Right.
Claude, OpenAI, Gemini. It's usually a rotation through those three. And also for different things, right? For image generation, I love Nano Banana, right? From
Yeah.
Gemini, right? And then apparently GPT Image Gen 2, which just came out, is pretty good. I haven't even used it yet. Like, I don't
I haven't used it either, but I use Gemini's Nano Banana and it's sick. Like the stuff
yeah.
it can do. Yeah.
So what's happening though is OpenAI at the time that we're having this conversation, OpenAI has doubled their price for models twice in a month. So when you go from GPT 5.2, they skipped 5.3. 5.3 was only a coding model. 5.4 and 5.5, the prices ticked up quickly. You look at Claude, Sonnet, and then Opus, and then Mythos, right, which is the unreleased, as we're having this conversation, model, right? The pricing is going up and up and up and up. Also, these models, right, where they used to be able to, like, maybe call a tool or two and do a search or something like that. Now they're running, for very long periods of time using lots and lots of tools. So and everything's starting to get clamped down, right? Like, so like the prosumer market where people were buying personal licenses and using them for business use, um, they the usage on these from the model providers directly was very generous, right? You wouldn't like hit rate limits and that kind of stuff. That's sort of ending. Enterprise agreements for the most parts don't have unlimited usage. They usually require paying API prices, like all that kind of stuff. So what we found is it's become very, very important to route tasks to different models, and the age of I use the same model for everything has sort of ended, unless you're just fine just paying lots of money because things get expensive. Like internally, my engineers spend around $1,500 a month per person on AI per engineer. Right? And we get the cheapest prices because we're direct to these model providers and all that. Like we've always been like, we're an AI company, we're doing lots of engineering tasks. Like, of course we use and spend a lot of money on AI, but sort of just to give you an idea of where things are going. So we decided in January of this year that it was extremely important for our company to be able to focus on control and optimization of models. So we actually have model routers that are newly released and very, very important, where we take open source models, best of breed models, uh, fast models, image models, all of that, and we combine them into a single sort of box where you just hit this type of router. And we have right now we have like light sort of credit saver mode, right? Performance, which is just like every day, and turbo, which is like, I need the highest intelligence, I don't care what it costs, right? And so by doing model routing, we have been able to reduce costs in many cases by about 75%. Because we found that in SMB, a lot of users of our platform, the complexity required for many tasks, you don't need the best of breed models for. Like, yes, it's required for certain decisions or certain parts of a conversation or certain things. But for the most part, if you can route to models that are more efficient cost wise, but can perform the same at a given task, like, hey, check my emails and tell me what's going on. Like, you can give me the top 10 models, you're going to get nearly identical results, right? And then we've also looked at the cadence of a request, right? A request, I'm calling it a request, but the technical term would be an agentic loop. So you type something into Hatz, and our harness says, okay, we're going to go reach out to the AI model, and the AI model is going to tell us to go use some tools. Hatz is going to go use all those tools. They're going to give that back to the AI model. We're going to guide the AI model to do this other thing. We're going to compress this. We're going to manage that, blah, 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 blah. So there's like 100 things happening under the hood on like your one chat conversation many times. So we found out if we can take parts of that conversation or that agentic loop that are high cost, right? Because they use lots of tools, but do not require high capabilities, we can dramatically reduce costs. So, for example, when you use Hatz, if you're doing web research, a web research agent, a sub agent will kick off. So let's say you're using Claude, Opus, or something like that. It'll actually kick off a research sub agent that'll do all of the searching, all of that kind of stuff, gathering the information and summarize that back up to Opus with a Haiku, which is like 100 times cheaper, right? So like in that case, we can reduce the cost of that query by 80%. So I get like how we got onto this conversation is like, where do you see things going? What models should you suggest? Now, where we're moving to over the next few months is around intelligence routing. So it's really looking at a problem and saying, okay, how much intelligence do you need for this? Can we match it to, something that we already have? And how can we do this for the most efficient sort of price or cost associated with that? And that's exactly where we're going and the direction where we're going and how we sort of like moved the company. So even like we're working on releasing our own models that are very good at picking tools and
Right.
routing models and things like that. So that's where I see things going.
Well, and so like, cause that's been a thing where I've been talking to folks out in the channel, and one of the things that I've been talking to folks out in the channel, and one of the things that they've been asking is, how do we pick something that we feel comfortable that we can support for our clients, right? So when we go out and we start to have conversations with our clients, they're like, great. My clients are like, I really would love to get rid of shadow IT in my environment. I would love to, secure my data, make sure that it's being, used in an appropriate way, that, somebody in, one part of my company can't see my accounting data, right? All that sort of stuff. So then they've been asking like, so what do I choose? Do I start saying that we're going to be an Anthropic provider? And I'm like, as I sit back and I'm like, that's actually a really good question that I don't have an answer to. So when I talk to Jimmy, I will ask, right? So like, cause when we've had these conversations with MSPs, and the common conversation that we have, and I'm an operations person, is, okay, that's great, but what happens when my service desk gets a ticket for that? And if every single one of my clients is using some sort of a different version of an AI tool, how do I support that? And then the immediate thought is from an old school mentality, which is, well, we need to pick up a specific vendor that we're going to work with, such as, we did with firewalls like Meraki or Fortinet or SonicWall or whatever. So what are you telling people? What's the way that MSPs can create some sort of standardization in what they support and how they deploy these models into their client environment, so they don't get stuck not being able to support this, or they're having to support everything, which makes it untenable and difficult?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what we set our business up on, to be a curator of really everything, an aggregator. So, we don't standardize on a single platform. We have access to all the models. We get access on the day they're released in most cases. Obviously I would tell them to partner with me because that's what I do.
Well, that's
But
what I
like,
want to know, because we've had that
yeah.
conversation. I'm like, I was like, my understanding is that Jimmy's team and his product aggregate these models together and give you a single interface in order to help you create, agentic workflows and things like that. So like, why don't we talk a little bit about how that works within your product, and like why you think that's the winning solution versus like, I'm going to be a Claude, a Claude partner, or I'm going to be an open AI partner.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Like I'm all for people using AI in general, and like I have seen people who like their client signed a year-long contract with OpenAI teams, and now they're like, oh, but we want to use Claude because everybody's using that now, right? So like the sort of like constant jumping of who's the best is like makes this very difficult, and also make it very confusing for clients because they'll ask one thing on Monday, and then on Tuesday they'll be like, oh, I want this other thing. Um, so like, I think like, sure, certainly access is a big piece of it, right? Like, how do I in my organization get approved access to Claude models, to OpenAI models, to Gemini models, to open source models, right? How do I do that? How do I ensure that they're hosted in the US or wherever they need to be, that they're logged for compliance, that there's a zero data retention with the inference providers, right? Like, so that's like one piece of it. The next is like control about through an organization. So how do you control users and usage? So for example, you could use Claude's lowest price models for a month all day for every conversation, and you won't hit their sort of limits or spend caps in our platform or in theirs. You switch to their most expensive model, you'll hit it very quickly, right? Like sort of like running through it. And these models are being released at mid-month, right? In the middle of, like, it's not like there's a procurement cycle. It's not like, hey, we're going to evaluate this and then turn it on. It's like, this is available today to everyone. And it's the pricing fundamentals of it have completely shifted, where now it's actually, right, 50 times more expensive. So how do you manage that spend and governance, and what, like, do you want to lock users out when they hit limits? Do you need to set different limits for different roles? Do you need different dials for flexibilities, right? So like all of those sort of like unsexy problems are where we really shine in the direction we're going. Yes, we also help with the management of everything too. So like when you set up your Hatz, you're really setting up like your AI storefront, like to really, for lack of a more mature description, right? What models do we want to available, right? How do we, what plans do we make available? What are our different user roles? What are they allowed to do? What agents have we already built that we're going to push into our client tenants? What workflows, et cetera. So like there's a lot of that. And if you're an MSP who specializes in like a couple different verticals, being able to create agents or workflows that work with those specific tools or that industry really well and push them into different clients, right? Like we really shine with that. But over the next quarter or half, 6 months, where we're really focusing is from the management control, right? What if you need audit logs and you need to ship them to a Microsoft peer review or something like that, or you need to show that you can check in on hedge fund traders to make sure that they can back up trades or whatever. Like, what about that? What about access to tools? And this department should have access to these tools. This department should have access to these tools. What about sharing credentials, right? Some integrations, right, require sort of service roles. Like ConnectWise is a great example of this, right? Their API is designed in more of a service role, not like a user role persona. So you need to create that user and share it among different people. How do you do that? So like we haven't solved all of these problems yet, and like we're in various stages of them, but that's like the type of thing that we're working on. And even going as far to setting up account teams. So how do we notify the vCIO or the account manager for Acme Inc. To go reach out to the customer, because this customer just sent up a bunch of agentic workflows on schedules that are going to cost a lot of money, and they might not even know that they just did that, right? And putting MSPs in that situation where they can be the thought leader, where they can be proactive, not just drive people to the most expensive models and try to get them to spend more every month, right? Like we're trying to guide people
Right.
through this journey, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's changing every day. And I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing from MSPs is, where do I even start to have these conversations? Like, to your point, there's a lot of people that are burying their head. And I don't think it's because they're Luddites or anything. I think they're really focused on, hey, like, I don't want to look stupid. Like, so it's better to not have the conversation than walk in front of the client and have them ask me a bunch of questions I can't answer. And so this is an approach I've been taking with folks that I've been coaching and working with. And I want to hear if you think this is the right approach. I said, listen, before you start landing on, like, you definitely should be figuring out what models are out there, what works for you, what you think you want to support. I've told them, as I go look at, Hatz, like there's places in the channel that you should be looking. Talk to Pax8, talk to whoever, right? Like, figure it out. I was like, however, I was like, this stuff is in their environment. right? People are already using it. Data is probably already leaking out. I said, why don't we just start with what you're already good at least you should be, which is and from your background, which is let's start with security, right?
Yep.
Let's have a conversation and you can sit down in front of your client and say, listen, I can scan your environment because I have RMM tools, so I can see what's installed on the computers. A lot of the times I have access to your firewall logs, or I've got a DNS filter on your laptops. I can tell you if people are going to these different, chat GPT and, Claude sites. I can tell you what's going on there, right? And then we can talk about maybe an electronic use policy. Like, do you have that written down that says, you guys as employees are not allowed to go do this, and then just start setting some guidelines, right? Like just start having that conversation so you sound like you know what you're talking about while you're in the background trying to figure all the other stuff out. Because if you can start having those conversations, you'll start getting input from your clients about what they're actually doing with AI and what they want to do with it. And I think that'll help you start to get information in order to start making better decisions about how you want to support it with your user base. Do you think that's a good approach, or do you go about it a different way when it comes to how you're teaching MSPs to engage with their clients?
Yeah, I mean, look, MSPs are very comfortable with the security conversation. You can go in your Cisco umbrella, you can go in your DNS filter, you can go in your threat locker, whatever it is, and you can pull these reports of what people are actually using and doing today, and have a conversation about shadow AI. We see partners doing this regularly. We see partners incorporating this into their QBR process or the equivalent of a QBR process, whatever they're doing, and then moving that into, we need to get something governed and an approved tool in place and an AI policy. And we need to have a conversation on what data we're allowed to and not allowed to put in AI. I think that is a great place to be right now. I think in the medium to longer term, being able to have a conversation from a business value perspective as AI, like what's happening is people are hiring slower because of AI's capabilities. So the budgets for AI are sort of changing because it's like, well, if we can do a lot of this with AI, maybe we only need to hire 5 people instead of 7 people, right? Which sort of like changes the dynamics of things. So if you're an MSP who can help manage that and roll that out and have that business conversation, really work through the process, there's a lot of money to be made. This isn't just tool spend that's happening. So like, I think that over the longer, like a message that works now is crawl, walk, run. Like, let's just get you started using AI in your business as an approved tool. Let's get some easy win use cases that people can do. And let's push this pie in the sky, sort of like an agent manages everything, out a couple months until everyone's familiar, trained up, and using AI. And that is a message that resonates, it works well, and it's practical, because a lot of businesses will either want to do nothing, or they'll have one person in their organization who wants to jump to like, we need to do blah, 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 blah. It's the equivalent of someone saying, hey, I need security, I need a pen test. And you're like, dude,
Right.
let's get
Why?
some endpoint protection in place and
Yeah.
like, get some email security and like update your devices and enable MFA. And like, then maybe we could like do an audit, and then maybe we could do a pen test. Like I can, so like, yes, I think security is the perfect place to start. But quickly moving into a business conversation will unlock a lot of opportunity to create value for your customers is, dollars.
Right. And so there's 2 things I do want to touch on real quick. One is I did not even think about until you just said it. It was kind of like an epiphany. So we talked about how people are slower to hire, right? And that's true.
Yep.
And you look at an example that you just provided is, if I could, let's just say 2x the productivity of one of my developers by spending $1,500 a month, like that seems like a no-brainer to me, right? Instead of hiring 2 developers, I just spend $1,500 more, whatever that is, 10, 15, 20%, like whatever your costs are on a developer, right? As an example. From the MSP model, over the last 10 years, everybody has shifted to per user pricing. So if we're not hiring as many people as a country, right, and we're supporting these small businesses, obviously we're going to have to figure out a way that if we're used to getting $150, $200, $300 per person per month as an MSP, as we're selling, what where does that take us, right? Because now we're going to
Oh
start
yeah.
seeing like are we creating new packages? Are we having to do add-ons with this product? Like, are we going to completely fundamentally shift the way that we bill for our services? Like, what are you hearing in the channel? Like, what's going on? Or if people haven't come to that realization yet, where are we at there? Have you thought about
Oh
that
no,
yet?
it breaks a lot of things. It breaks a lot of
Yeah.
things. And a lot of people's reaction to it breaking things is like, okay, well then it's not gonna work and like let's move on. Which is like I
Well,
like
that's like, oh, they're like, what do you mean I can't bill by the hour? Like, that's stupid. Let's just not go there. Like,
yeah,
like that,
no,
it changed once, it could change again, right?
yeah, no, look, it if you believe that people are going to hire less people in their company and SMBs are going to stay leaner or scale with less people than they would have in an alternate reality where there's no AI, and also spend more money on AI um, in the near future, then you're right. It is a contradicting thought to I'm going to set my entire business up of bill per user per seat, right? So how can like the where is that revenue made up? Where is the opportunity? And the opportunity is in helping managing and selling that AI. So like there's like approaching the situation of, oh, I don't want to do that because if my customers are more efficient with AI, they're going to hire less people, and then I'm going to make less money. Is a short term, is a short sighted way to think about it. So like, it's about getting started right now. Like the answer, no matter what, is like we need to build the internal muscles to support this, have a SKU for this, offer services for this, etc. Um, but you're right. It like if those things are true, it does break some long fought MSP traditions, which is almost going backwards, right? Because MSP went from like break fix, sort of like, oh, let's move into like advisory services. We sell business process, we sell solutions, to, oh, standardize everything, get your lowest operating cost possible with a standardized stack per seat and be able to scale, to almost moving back to like business process, like let's go through this, right? And that's where people with big vCIO practices, are really shining with this stuff, or advisory services. A lot of MSPs, like who are our partners, they're getting a lot of their AI revenue and deal sourcing through their advisory services because it is an opportunity. So there's an initial revenue opportunity of rolling out AI tooling and access to models and whatever that is. And then there's a long-term, much larger revenue opportunity on being the go-to company that manages the intelligence and AI spend for an organization. Make sure they're
Right.
spending in the right places, doing the right things, and optimizing the right processes, or re-architecting processes entirely. So the latter is the big opportunity, and not everyone sees that right now.
No, and I think that that's the shift that I'm gonna wind up having to really focus with my coaching clients on, which is like my opinion has always been the success that I've seen in MSPs where I've worked or managed or built, or the ones that I've coached with, they have strong account management teams. Like, and whatever you want to call them, like it's not typically a sales-based account manager, right? Where it's more of that consultative technical account manager, vCIO, whatever you want to call it, right? Where you move from, $5, 7, $10 million, where you're in that range, that no man's land. If you can shift responsibilities off the owner or the primary operator to smart folks that can have intelligent conversations with your clients about their business, right? And use the technology to help them, those MSPs scale faster, they scale more profitably, right? They're in a better spot. And so I'm finding that if those folks aren't in a position to have conversations with their clients about AI, start talking about processes, like how that works, what those business outcomes are, like then they're this whole like, hey, let me show up and like try to sell you something. And hey, look, I'm looking at the stack and you don't have, web filtering in place. So I'm going to go ahead and, approach this white space conversation differently. Clients right now are like, listen, I appreciate the fact that you think that I need some extra security, but I've got 3 people over here that I noticed they're using, different websites to upload my personal or my business data in to start generating PowerPoints and stuff. First of all, I'm not happy that they're doing that, but also I'm not mad at the fact that these PowerPoint presentations and, these, proposals that we're putting out are happening 10 times faster and they look twice as professional as anything we've ever distributed. So I think that like having trained account managers and outcomes, like having that middle layer of consultative employee within the MSP is going to be absolutely critical to the ones that are going to survive this, because the ones that are just selling commodity technology services, they're going to really struggle. Like I don't see how they get past this over the next couple of years, but I don't know if maybe I'm just being, I don't know, hyperbolic about the whole thing and just like, oh, this is like a terrible situation for MSPs who aren't ready for it. But I don't know, man. Like I don't know what you're seeing, but I think it's scary for MSPs that don't have a good account managers at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, like more about the MSP biz. I see a lot, right? And I see adoption trends, and I have an unfair view because we have 1,000 partners that I get to,
Right.
work with and see. But you're in it every day. Like, much more about how this will play out with, having conversations with the customers and all of that. But, I tend to agree with you. Like, we're going through a huge shift in business as a whole, not just the MSP industry, but every single industry because of AI, and things are going to change fast. And if you're not ready or nimble enough to move, like, you could seriously get hurt, and the core of your business could sort of like change seemingly overnight if you're not ready for it. If you're been in it and training and already a year into this journey, you're like, oh, that wasn't overnight. Like, I've been watching that happen. Right. But what it'll look like is, renewals start getting harder, right? People start leaving, employees start going down, employee counts start going down, growth slows because you can't hire new customer or can't find new customers. That's sort of those signs sort of like happening.
So real quick before we get into the questions here at the end, I do want to ask you a couple of really quick things. So what really, I think we've talked about what excites you about AI, but I want to know what freaks you out a little bit. Like what is on the horizon where, I mean, is it lack of investment in data centers where you've got communities that are kind of pushing back against this sort of thing now? Is it, limitation of the ability of us to get and retain chips so that we can actually build these systems? Is it this shit's going to get really smart and we're like going to wind up having overlords? Like what concerns you about where AI is going a little bit, just that you're keeping your pulse on it, you're watching it like presciently?
Yeah, I mean, the constraints are the constraints, and it just affects price. Like, it's fundamental economics. There's not enough chips, there's enough data centers, things are going to get more expensive. Like, that's that. What really concerns me, like, I can deal with that, right? Like, it sucks, but like, I can deal with it and manage it. What really concerns me is the human element. So I've seen it for a while because we've been so on the bleeding edge and been working with software engineers, where AI has primarily been focused on innovating. Where when someone who has worked very hard for a very long time develop a certain set of skills that used to take years to acquire, and then someone with much less experience, aided with AI, can get to the same outcome in the same amount of time or a shorter period of time, people don't think about the human element of what that does to people's identity. So AI 2026 is the year of AI automating the white collar worker, right? Where AI is getting crazy good at making presentations, looking through documents, Excel, like all this stuff, sort of like this business process where you can go and upload a spreadsheet and ask for, your marketing numbers, your whatever, your synthesis. And it's pretty good, right? You definitely need humans to look over it and review it. But now someone who's a lot more junior can get to a lot of these senior places a lot quicker. And if you're not there to train and coach and help your valued employees, they can feel some type of way, because someone who has all the experience but isn't willing to learn AI versus someone who has way less experience but is willing to really push the boundaries of AI, the latter could end up a lot more productive than the former, which really messes with people's heads. So I'm very concerned about what's going to happen with with the workforce.
Yeah, I can imagine that, especially within the United States, like so much of people's identity is tied to their career, right? And the idea that you could spend a lifetime learning something and, suddenly somebody else could be really good at it really quickly. I think the side to that right now that I'm finding solace in with what I do on a day-to-day basis is I still feel like at this point, and maybe it'll change, human in the loop is critical. And there's times
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
I'm like, give me this information and it spits it out. And I'm like, if I were not fluent in what I do,
Mm.
right, I would look at that and go, that looks correct. The minute I look at it, I'm like, what is that? Like, that doesn't look
Yeah.
like, what is that? Like, fix that. Like, that is a weird, and they're like, oh yeah, we inferred this. Or, I took the data and just thought maybe that would be something you would want to see. And I'm like, that's not what I asked for. like that's not great. So I think there's still a place for people who are experienced and understand their business. Again, and come back to this consulting thing. Like if you're consultative and thoughtful and you understand a certain industry in a certain way, I think AI can be a huge tool to augment you. But I think if you use it as a replacement to that knowledge, that I think you're going to be in a dangerous situation where you're getting data and information back that looks fairly accurate. But if you're making business decisions off of it, you could be in a world of hurt. You can make some really bad decisions.
100% agree. And I think that that is becoming less and less as these systems get better. But the people who just don't use them at all, like those are the ones that are really gonna get like
Yes.
a person with experience who knows AI enough to know the limitations and have a feel and a sense for it, and like oh wait, it couldn't do that a month ago. Now it can do that, right? Like that's where you need to be as a professional worker to stay ahead. And I think a lot of people won't even do anything, and they're gonna be in for a rude awakening.
Before we get to the questions, the last question for you on this is what's super exciting for you right now? Like, what do you like without giving away something that maybe you guys are working on, or maybe you want to hint at something like, what are you just like, holy shit, by the end of this year, like this is going to be hot. Like where are you getting jazzed when you get up in the morning and come into the office? Like what's going on?
Yeah, we're building basically a multi-agent swarm that an MSP can come in and connect their data, like their PSA or their customer list, or upload it or whatever they want. And all these agents go out and start researching the companies, start pulling in whatever relevant data they can have, suggest surveys to send out, that kind of stuff. And do the hard work preparing for AI meetings where you can, I mean, obviously you have control over it over an MSP, but I think by the end of this quarter, maybe middle of next, um, you'll be able to click a button, and a couple minutes later, an AI will come back and say, "Hey, Acme Corp, here are their top 5 ways we think they can use AI. I've actually drafted up proof of concept demos for that. Here are the right people you should talk to. Here are the things that they probably care about, and here's some information that you have as an MSP that nobody else has, either from ticketing history or DNS or whatever, that can help you navigate that conversation. Click here to draft an email. Click here to generate a presentation." So like that's what I'm working on, and it's like very fun because this is a hard thing for MSPs, right? Being able to articulate this stuff, being able to communicate it. So we want to make it super easy from a go-to-market perspective, but also an AI knowledge perspective.
Hot. It really is. That's hot stuff. So, all right, so let's hop into our 5 questions here. So, my first question is, what's the best business book you've ever read? Like, tell everybody out there the book that changed your life when you read it. Like, you got one?
Um, there's lots of them. I think one of my favorites is Beyond the Cloud by Mark Benioff. I'm actually a Benioff Salesforce stan. And I don't know if that makes you think less of me if you're listening to this, but I do really like that.
But no one gets in trouble for Salesforce. Like everybody's like, yeah, let's just do that. Like it's
Yeah,
expensive, but it
yeah,
works.
yeah.
Why did you like that book so much? What did it do for you?
Um, I don't know. I mean, Benioff is like one of the best marketers I've ever seen. And at the time that I was reading that, I was in a marketing role. And he like invented SaaS basically, which was pretty cool. did some cool things along the way. And yeah, like I thought the building of Salesforce, maybe not the Salesforce we see today, and I might not agree with Mark Benioff on everything, but he's just like he's just an impressive person. Yeah, it's a great book. It's very good.
Cool. All right. What's your favorite curse word? You're welcome to say it or not. It's up to you. I don't mind. I put that there's explicit language used on the show, and I post on YouTube. So
it feels weird saying my favorite curse word is fuck, but it absolutely is. I drop F-bombs left and right.
I use it like pepper on me. It's like I spice up my conversations with it. So yes, fuck is a good curse word. I don't mind that one at all. It's you can use it in so many different ways. It's so fantastic. We had a guest on recently, and he had a word that I actually couldn't. I was like, we can't use that. I was scandalized, and I'm a sailor. I was like, whoa, yeah. So I was like, we're gonna go ahead and edit that. But I was like, but thank you for coming prepared. So if you were on a desert island and you could have the music of one artist or band, like it's your band, they're in town, you're always going to see them, you'll go see them someplace wild. Like I'm a music guy, so I just like to ask this question, like, who is it? Who's your band? Who are you going to see?
I mean, I'd have to say the Dead or Fish or something, because they're just gonna keep iterating and jamming, and they could play the same 500 songs, but they're gonna be a different way every time.
Yeah. Did you go see him at the Sphere with John Mayer when they were doing Dead and Company? Did you go there?
No, I didn't.
Come on.
Yeah, I did get invited to see Fish at the Sphere last week when I was in Vegas, and I didn't do that either.
Dude.
I've basically stopped going to concerts almost entirely since I founded this company. I think I've been to 2 where I used to go to like 20 a year. So it's been rough.
But you have to take care of you, Jimmy.
I know.
Like you gotta go. Like a Fish concert at the Sphere with Anastasio and everybody, that would have been so much fun. So that's a bummer. Yeah. I haven't been to the Sphere. I've seen it. I walked around the outside of it a couple of times, but I've never been inside. But I heard it's sick. Really sick. There's apparently they're saying there's a rumor that Tool is going to do a residency there, and
oh, there you go. Yeah.
And my friends are going to see Metallica there, I think in February, which I think would
Tool in the Sphere could get dark like that. I might like freak out if I'm
a little bit. Like some of their, like especially they're doing the visualizations, and if people remember, I'm dating myself, but like back in the 90s and early 2000s, they had some music videos that were real like weird, and I mean, if they incorporate some of those visuals into what they're doing, like that could get wild. But that would be super cool to do. So you can change names. You don't have to name names you don't want to, but if you had a business meeting, a sales call, an HR meeting, something that was like the worst ever, where you're just like, yeah, no, that was just weird and it was awful. Like, is there one that comes to mind where you're just like, yeah, that probably never should have happened. That was terrible.
Well, I'm notorious for hating meetings. My whole team knows that I hate meetings.
Yeah.
And like hate meetings. And anytime there's a meeting about meetings, I like absolutely like lose my shit. I do. It's like pretty bad. Yeah.
We're going to get together and have this. I hate that. We used to do that. I'm like, is this a meeting about a meeting? And they're like, and everybody would get real quiet. I'm like, come on, y'all.
So
like,
you want to schedule a meeting to talk about how we hate meetings about meetings?
Yeah, that's what we should do. Yeah. We'll just put it on the calendar. That's a good one. Okay, so last question is, if there's somebody that you would recommend, you can make an intro to, that I should have on this podcast, like who is it? Like who do people in the channel need to be talking to right now? Who's out there who's saying interesting things? Like who needs to be heard?
Oh, I don't know. Have you had Chris Day on? He's been like reaching out to me, like trying to get MSP AI, where's it going? Back in the like him and I have recently connected, and he's been all about AI and trying to really lead the ship there on how things are going there. Yeah.
I'll reach out to Chris. That'd be cool. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good opportunity. Cool. Well, dude, So we're going to wrap it up, but I can't thank you enough for, being on and taking time. Cause I know, as you said, you don't even have time to go to a concert. So you're a very busy man, and I appreciate, you hanging out with me for the last hour and chatting it up. So thank you for everything. And I wish you guys the best for sure.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.
All right. Thanks for having me on.